Oh hey, didn't see you there. Just working on a video about the Pac-12. You see, it's after dark, and the Pac-12 usually gets crazy after night falls. Most of the East Coast doesn't watch past 9 p.m., which is 6 o'clock our time in the West Coast, the best coast. But after that time period, teams get a little wild. There's a reason why there's Pac-12 After Dark. I'd like to rate all the teams in the Pac-12 this season based on their After Dark rating. I'm going to rate them like movies. I'll go rated G to NC-17. A G movie is something you just bring your whole family to. It's a fun experience. You know, you want to be there and you know what you're expecting. But NC-17 is disgusting, and you do not want your kids to see that because you will see things that you should not see a football team do. Now, Arizona, they lost all 5 of their games last year. They haven't won a football game since October 5th, 2019. They are projected to win 1 game. They have a Vegas over-under of 2.5. They start out the season with BYU. That team did as well as they could last year, so this is a tall order. They've got 2 quarterbacks this coming year, Gunnar Cruz and Will Plummer. They're both 2 sides of a bad quarterback coin. One does one thing well, the other one does the opposite thing well. The running backs are very inexperienced. The wide receivers are not deep. The defense is full of transfers. The team is rebuilding. I give this team a Pac-12 After Dark rating of PG because they'll be either hot trash or they'll surprise someone. It can get interesting on November 19th against Wazoo, but they will get absolutely walloped against Oregon and USC. But they might beat UCLA on October 9th. Arizona State is a team that is normally one of the most chaotic teams. You know, you see them on after 7 o'clock and you're like, oh God, we're in for something interesting. But this year they have expectations. The defense returns 10 starters. Jaden Daniels, their quarterback, is a Heisman candidate. They've got a running back, Rashad White. He's a special talent. The Vegas over-under is 9 wins. They could win the Pac-12 South if the USC falters, but we'll see how that goes. I gave the Arizona State Sun Devils a PG-13 rating. Because like I said, normally they shock everyone in the league, but they've got expectations this year. And if they don't live up to that, you probably shouldn't see that kind of team. The biggest test will be against BYU. They're another team in the Pac-12 that plays BYU. Apparently BYU's taking on all challengers this year. They also take on USC and Washington. They have to go to Seattle. But while they do have expectations, they still could falter in typical ASU fashion. Colorado went 4-2 in 2020, but they lost their last 2 games. That's unfortunate. The Vegas over-under for them is 4.5. So that sucks. The running backs are back from injuries. The defense has some promise. Brendan Lewis is a freshman quarterback who's in line to start, so that could be promising. I give Colorado a PG rating for Pac-12 After Dark because they have some nice talent. It's still weaker than most. They're typically not the Pac-12 After Dark team. Even though they play at a higher level elevation in Boulder, it doesn't really lend to crazy games. Their game against Arizona could go either way. If they are the favorite, then they might lose. If they're the underdog against Arizona, they might win. Who knows? It's Pac-12 After Dark. Cal went 1-3 in 2020. Their Vegas over-under is 6 wins. They've got a lot of returning offensive starters. Chase Garbers is their quarterback, a returning senior. That's promising. Got a lot of returning defensive starters. This team has the same coach, Justin Wilcox, over the last many years. But I'm going to give them a NC-17 because this is something that could be very interesting to watch, but you can't look away. They could be bad. They look like they're a lot better. They could shock some teams. They could go up to Washington and beat them on their own home turf, or they could get walloped. I think their biggest test will be Oregon on October 15th. It might be Oregon's biggest test. Go Ducks. They could be a scary team when the East Coast isn't watching, but also they could be a garbage team. Let's find out together. Oregon went 4-3 in 2020 and won the Pac-12. They've got a transfer quarterback in Anthony Brown, who's a senior. He's going to be the starter. Kayvon Thibodeau is an amazing defensive player, and he could be a Heisman if they gave the award to defensive players. A lot of offensive talent returns. C.J. Verdell, Johnny Johnson. They are primed to stay at the top of the cream of Pac-12. So it looks good. Their Vegas over-under is 9 wins. I give them a Pac-12 After Dark rating of R. They're a top team, but that means nothing when you're in a shootout past 10:30 p.m. They need defense to step up because if Cal comes in on the 15th and decides to play their best game of the season, they are going to need some help. Granted, it is at Autzen Stadium, and Autzen is a great fan base. Now they'll be able to have fans there, but it could get messy if they're not in the right mindset. We've seen the Ducks do this with Dakota Prukop, and then Vernon Adams, promising transfer quarterbacks that just kind of wilted, and we'll see if the Ducks end up doing that this year. Oregon State went 2-5 in 2020. They are looking at a new quarterback. I need to remember his name. I will write that in the comments there. Their offensive line is back. Their defense returns most starters, but the secondary wasn't very good. Their defensive line wasn't very good. Jaden Grant is a good talent in the secondary, but they need some help. I'm going to give them a Pac-12 After Dark rating of G because generally you know what to expect from the Oregon State Beavers. They don't surprise a lot of teams with their shocking wins. They used to back in the day. I remember them beating USC a couple times. It was incredible. I'm not a Beaver fan, but I'm sure that is back of the mind of a lot of Beaver supporters, including Jonathan Smith, their current head coach. I mean, they might shock Arizona State on November 20th, but otherwise they might win the virus formerly known as the Civil War again. Who knows? We'll see. Stanford went 4-2 in 2020. Their over-under is at 4 wins, which is shocking. They've lost a lot of talent. New starting quarterback, and 0 expectations of the team. Defensively, the secondary was bad last year, but should be better this year. But at the same time, with such low expectations, you don't know what to expect. They've got an unforgiving schedule. They've got Notre Dame. They got USC. They've got Oregon. They've got Washington. It's just a murderer's row. No wonder Vegas has them at 4.5 wins. I am going to give them a PG-13 rating because they have low expectations and an unfavorable schedule, but also still good coaching. So that could result in some wins in addition to their talent. We'll see what happens with Stanford, but typically they are pretty level. David Shaw has them pretty level all the time. UCLA went 3-4 last year. It's been a rough go with Chip Kelly's time there so far, but they seem to be going on the straight and narrow this time. Their Vegas over-under is 7 wins, which is promising. They just dominated Hawaii 44-10. They've got good quarterback play because Dorian Thompson-Robinson is a talented quarterback, and he's been there for 4 years. They've got some big tight ends who can get yardage. All 5 of their offensive linemen. Their defense is very solid. They dismantled Hawaii, like I said, in week 0. And also last game, running back Zach Charbonneau had 106 yards, 3 touchdowns on only 6 carries. The man didn't even need anything. 6 carries? I give them a Pac-12 After Dark rating in PG. They're the opposite of Stanford. They have expectations again, but they are primed to be upset because, I mean, they're still a young team because Chip Kelly is in his 3rd season coaching them. A trap game for them could be October 19th against Arizona. But after their bye week, they don't have to leave Los Angeles at all. They've got home games. They've got a game against USC. That's it. So the end of the season could help them. USC went 5-1 in 2020. Keaton Slovis is coming back as a quarterback. He's another Heisman candidate. He's very talented, but his offensive line didn't keep him upright as much as they could have. The USC secondary is really good. I give them a Pac-12 After Dark rating of G. They should win the Pac-12 South. I don't know why I'm knocking on wood. Their coaching is underwhelming, but they're still a well-disciplined team, and that helps them avoid upsets in the dead of night. On November 6th against ASU, that could be their biggest test, but they also go to Notre Dame the week before, so right in the middle end of the season could be tough for US. Utah finished 2020 with a 3-2 record. They finished on a 3-game winning streak, which is promising. Their Vegas over-under is 8.5 wins, which is very generous. The transfer portal is driving this team. They've got a dominant offensive line. Their defense should be talented. They've got great linebackers. I give them a Pac-12 After Dark rating of PG-13. They got some good talent, a lot of questions. They still have a high ceiling to reach. They could shock UCLA, or UCLA could shock them on October 30th at home. Or they could get shocked by Stanford, who has no expectations right now. We'll see what happens in wherever the Utes play in Utah. I just don't know exactly where to play. That sounds unprofessional. Washington went 3-1 to 2020. They are the favorite to win the Pac-12 North, right next to the Ducks. Their offensive line is fantastic. They've got a good quarterback, Dylan Morris, back to run the show. Their linebackers are really talented. Their head coach Jimmy Lake led the Pac-12's #1 defense, so that's a promising thing for the Huskies. I give them a Pac-12 After Dark rating of G because you should be able to expect good wins out of them. It shouldn't be too crazy. Their biggest tests will be against Oregon on November 6th. And they also have to go to Michigan on September 11th. I just don't see this team letting themselves go. They're very talented, and they proved it over the last few years. Finally, Washington State. They went 1-3 in 2020. The Vegas over-under is 6 wins. They've got tons of talent on offense. It should get them a hum along. Their defense returns 10 of 11 starters. Their pass defense is not as great, but, coming back, they could be improving, as college players. There's a lack of discipline from the coaching. Nick Rolovich had a lot of controversy this offseason with just getting the vaccine for COVID-19. When you can't lead a team by example, then how are you supposed to create a good culture? It's just, you can't create a good culture if you don't follow through with things. I give Wazoo a Pac-12 After Dark rating of R because this team could surprise everybody every night. They could play spoiler. It's not Mike Leach's team because that team slung the ball everywhere, but they could play spoiler a lot. On October 30th, they take on Arizona State or against Cal 28 days before that on the 2nd. They're good games that could be shootouts or surprising wins for the Washington State Cougars. Anyway, thank you for watching my Pac-12 After Dark ratings preview. Put a lot into it. Just trying to get some sports content out there. If you like this video or you'd like me to expand on some things, check out down in the comments. I've got some games to watch in another video. Thanks for watching.